Being a teenager isn't easy for anyone. We all know that. It was especially difficult for a kid that we'll call Luke. Things started getting rough for Luke when, in his early teenage years, his mother was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease as a result of a serious car accident. In addition to his responsibilities as a high school student, he and his older brother became caretakers for their mother while their father worked hard to support the family. On a hot summer's day, at the age of 15, Luke's mother requested to go outside to sit on the patio by the pool. So he helped her outside and sat her down in a sun lounger and went back inside, but not before leaving her with a book to read while she soaked up the sun. After about an hour or so, Luke came back outside to check up on his mother, but tragically he found her lifeless body in the pool. She had accidentally drowned. Luke felt immense guilt, understandably, due to the what-ifs that arose during the reflection of the terrible incident. He understandably fell into a deep depression and opted to not attend school for roughly a year. When he got back to school, he still felt the weight of the situation impeding his academic motivation. So he and his buddies would skip class and find woodsy areas near the school to hang out and drink. It was all fun and games for Luke until one day a security guard caught him drinking at their favorite hangout spot. Perhaps the dean or principal or whoever in charge of discipline felt compelled to punish him mercifully due to his family situation. Regardless, to avoid expulsion, he was voluntold to assist for a semester in a special needs classroom. That's where Luke met my older brother Michael, who has autism, obsessive compulsive disorder, and visual impairment. My brother and Luke really got along and quickly formed a strong connection. When the semester ended, he expressed to one of the teachers in the special ed classroom his interest in working in some capacity with my brother. So that teacher communicated Luke's interest to my mother, and they subsequently got in contact. For context, growing up, we always had people, usually high school and college students, over the house working one-on-one with my brother, helping him with his homework, playing video games with him, working on his speech and motor skills, etc. Anyways, my mom and I met Luke on the same day during the summer of 2003. After the interview, my mom took Luke, Michael, and I to this place called the Beekman Rec, which was a recreational center in town that had a small man-made beach, baseball fields, and playgrounds. Both my mom and I really enjoyed meeting Luke, and my mother especially looked forward to hiring him and seeing all the ways he would benefit my brother. However, Luke kind of ghosted my mom. He didn't check in with her, nor did he return her 2 calls. If it was anyone else, my mom would have moved on and said, "Oh well." But she was aware of Luke's mother's passing and decided to give him another chance because, as she'd tell you, quote, he didn't have a mother to nag him. That quote is what she always says when talking about Luke. Anyways, sure enough, the 3rd time she called him, he answered and was tremendously apologetic. He attributed his flakiness to mental health issues spurred by the sudden death of a cousin from a car accident shortly after he had met my mother and me. Luke started working with my brother quickly following that phone conversation, and over the next 2 years, it seemed like he was always over the house. Getting to know him became a pleasure, and it didn't take long before I felt like I had another brother and a role model. In the summer of 2005, when we moved to Florida, Luke's working relationship with Michael became much less frequent, obviously, but he would still come on family trips with us from time to time to have an extra set of eyes to ensure my brother's safety. And when we would visit New York after the move to see friends and family remaining in the Big Apple, we would always be sure to reach out to Luke to link up. In early October of 2005, we made our first trip back to New York. I got to see him during that trip. He took me off-roading in his Jeep for the first and, to date, only time. In case you're unfamiliar with that term, it's essentially driving over rough terrain away from regular roads. It was a rather exhilarating experience. Luke was sure to blast music throughout the entirety of the ride. Since he was like my cool older brother, I didn't have the cojones to request DJ responsibilities. In the fall of 2005, I found myself in the midst of my classic rock era, so I would have much rather listened to Queen or Led Zeppelin or AC/DC, but Luke had the car and the keys and, the unique ability to tolerate me, so he got to choose the music. For the entirety of our ride, he blasted hip-hop music. It certainly wasn't like the hip-hop I had been accustomed to from listening to pop radio. This artist didn't sound too similar to 50 Cent or Nelly or Shaggy. While I certainly felt the artist Luke chose sounded far more aggressive, I also felt it sounded far more authentic. Not that I knew what that word meant in 2005, but you get what I'm saying. I definitely wasn't ready to add that artist or that form of hip hop to my shitty ass iPod mini, but I did find it interesting, so much so that I was prepared to gather the name of that artist, so perhaps one day down the road, when my pretentious ass could admittingly appreciate genres other than rock, I would give that artist a chance. After we got back to Luke's house, I asked him who the artist was. He nonchalantly responded, quote, "Oh, that was Tupac." I'm Dove Brenner, and this is Hotcakes from a 90s Stand, and today I will discuss the life and career of one of the most legendary rappers to walk the face of the earth, and ask the question, what is Tupac's signature song? Tupac was born Lisane Parish Crooks on June 16th, 1971, in East Harlem, New York, to Afeni Shakur and William Garland. Not too long after his birth, Afeni Shakur changed his name to Tupac Amaru, which means shining serpent in Quechua. After 18th century Peruvian revolutionary Jose Gabriel Tupac Amaru II, who led a rebellion against the Spanish colonial power. Regarding the name change, his mother said, quote, "I wanted him to have the name of revolutionary, indigenous people in the world. I wanted him to know he was part of a world culture and not just from a neighborhood." Tupac's mother was heavily involved with the Black Panther Party and actually became pregnant with him while out on bail after being charged for planning to attack New York City police stations. Foreshadowing the badassery, if you will, that would define her son, Afeni Shakur defended herself and successfully convinced a jury of her innocence. In 1975, she married Mutulu Shakur, the adopted brother of her first husband. Tupac took the last name of his stepfather, hence the name Tupac Shakur. Tupac spent the majority of his childhood moving around throughout New York City, primarily residing in the Bronx and Harlem. When he was 13 years old, the Shakur family moved to Baltimore, Maryland, where Tupac discovered his love of the arts and performing. He ultimately ended up attending the Baltimore School of the Arts, studying theater, ballet, and jazz. It was at that school where he began engaging in rap competitions, gaining a positive reputation around the school for his emceeing. However, at the age of 17, as the family struggled in Baltimore to make ends meet, as well as Afeni Shakur's concern for the safety of her kids due to the increasing violence in the city, Tupac and his sister Sequoia were sent to Marin City, California to live with a friend of their mother. Despite Tupac's residence in a poor outskirt of San Francisco, his mother's friend managed to enroll him in one of the best schools in the area, Tamalpais High School in Mill Valley. Tupac's mother eventually joined him and his sister in Marin City before the family moved to Oakland following Tupac's high school graduation. Unfortunately, around this time, Afeni Shakur relapsed on cocaine, whose addiction came back with a mighty rage, consequently fracturing Tupac's relationship with her. Following his graduation, he formed an important relationship with Layla Steinberg, from whom Tupac took a writing workshop. She became a mentor for him and ultimately his manager. Steinberg introduced him to Atron Gregory, the manager of Digital Underground, a hip-hop group who had already gained traction for their hit single, The Humpty Dance, which peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. Gregory introduced him to the leader of Digital Underground, Gregory Jacobs, better known as Shock G. Impressed with Tupac, Shock G offered him a gig working as a roadie and backup dancer for Digital Underground. Tupac seized the opportunity, enabling him to get in Digital Underground's good graces. They featured him on Same Song, the opening track off their 1991 EP, humorously titled This Is an EP Release. Tupac began his rap career at 2 minutes and 20 seconds into that song with a short 8-bar verse demonstrating his emceeing potential. He opens the lore of his career with tremendous wordplay, doing a quadruple rhyme with the lines, quote, "Now I clown around when I hang around with the underground. Girls who used to frown say I'm down when I come around." Tupac's performance on the track gained the attention of Interscope Records, who signed him to a record deal in August of 1991. On November 12, 1991, Interscope released Tupac's debut studio album, Tupacalypse Now, and hip-hop hasn't been the same since. In just under an hour, the questionable production in Tupacalypse Now incorporates jazz rap, golden age hip-hop, G-funk, and samples galore. Among the most notable artists sampled or interpolated include Herbie Hancock, Bill Withers, P-Funk, Stevie Wonder, NWA, James Brown, and LL Cool J. Lyrically, throughout the record, he details the hellish social issues that the black community in urban areas face. He discusses the police bias, police brutality, and institutionalized racism that lead to the entrapment of black people mentally, physically, and economically. In multiple songs, the wrath of police brutality results in him fantasizing over enacting revenge against law enforcement. Other social issues he touches on include the crack epidemic, teen pregnancy, neglectful parenting, sexual assault, and gun violence. Despite the heavy topics found overwhelmingly throughout the record, Tupac leaves room for playful, braggadocious lyrics as well as a tune celebrating friendship. The album became a minor critical and commercial success. Tupacalypse Now peaked at number 64 on the Billboard Hot 200 in April of 1992. The album's tragic second single, Brenda's Got a Baby, peaked at number 3 on the rap charts in May of 1992. AllMusic gave the album 3.5 stars out of 5, characterizing it as, quote, a great look at what Tupac could offer and a must-have. The online hip-hop publication Rap Reviews awarded the LP 8 out of 10 stars, with the reviewer Emily Woods calling it, quote, some of the most powerful stuff he ever recorded and is pivotal to any understanding of his artistic persona. Not everybody liked Tupacalypse Now, though. After a police officer was murdered by a man who had been pulled over while listening to the album, the vice president at the time, Dan Quayle, criticized Interscope Records for releasing a record with such violent imagery and attributed the death of the slain cop to the record. Vice President Quayle stated, quote, once again, we're faced with an irresponsible corporate act. There's absolutely no reason for a record like this to be published by a responsible corporation. Today, I am suggesting that Time Warner's subsidiary, Interscope Records, withdraw this record. It has no place in our society. Well, Interscope did no such thing. On February 16th, 1993, Tupac released his sophomore effort, which we'll call Strictly. The album featured guest appearances from a bevy of 90s rap stars, including Ice-T, Ice Cube, and Stretch. In terms of production, the album took a notable leap in terms of quality. Within the production, Tupac continues to celebrate blackness, incorporating African-American musical icons through the sampling of artists such as P-Funk, James Brown, and Ice Cube. In terms of style, Strictly finds itself divided between two moods. The first half of the album contrasts its predecessor with much more hardcore hip-hop. The second half of the album, however, tranquilizes the mood a bit with much funkier bass lines and more horns, giving it strong G-funk and jazz rap vibes. Lyrically, there is definitely quite a bit to unpack. Piggybacking off Tupacalypse Now, Tupac continues his criticism of the police and institutional racism, but more specifically in this album, he frequently advocates for black men to take advantage of the Second Amendment and become armed in their struggle for liberation. With the success and notoriety of Strictly's predecessor, Tupac found two new enemies that are mentioned multiple times on the record: Dan Quayle and the media. He calls out Quayle on 3 separate songs and expresses such disgust with the media that he threatens them if they don't give his album a 5-star review. Though I'm pretty sure that one was a joke. Anyways, the most pivotal moment of lyricism found on the record was the birth of his soft side. In one song, which we'll talk more about later, he empathizes immensely with women suffering from societal misogyny and calls out men to treat women better. That said, Tupac also has a few songs on the record boasting about what a hard ass he is and why no one should fuck with him. I found it rather annoying only because the wordplay was mid, but I digress. The album proved to be a breakthrough success for the young rapper. Strictly peaked on the Billboard Albums chart at number 24. That's 40 spots higher than its predecessor. To date, the album has sold over 1.6 million copies. The album's 4 singles helped the album's success, especially the album's second and third singles. On July 3rd, 1993, Tupac Shakur entered the Billboard Hot 100 for the first time. And 3 months later, Strictly's 14th track, I Get Around, peaked at number 11 on the Billboard Hot 100. Then, in January of 1994, the album's Black Sheep, Keep Your Head Up, hit number 12. Now, this is not a true crime podcast, nor is this a show where I feel comfortable questioning any person's morality or will make judgments regarding an individual's character. However, the story of Tupac cannot be told without sharing an incident that occurred on November 18th, 1993 at the Parker Meridian Hotel in Midtown, New York, near Central Park. Ayanna Jackson, a woman who had sexual relations with Tupac earlier that night, found herself in his hotel room. Tupac's manager, Charles Fuller, music executive Jacques Ognant, and a friend of Ognant were also in the room. There, Jackson claimed that she was forced by the group of men to perform oral sex on both Tupac and Ognant's friend. After the assault occurred and Jackson left the room, she reported the incident to hotel security, and consequently, Tupac, Fuller, and Ognant were arrested, with Ognant's friend leaving the scene before being identified. Throughout the entirety of the trial, Tupac maintained his innocence, insisting that the encounter was consensual, and the accusation stemmed from Jackson's jealousy with regards to Tupac's promiscuity. On December 1st, just days after Tupac had been shot 5 times during a robbery, he and Fuller were convicted on 2 sexual abuse charges, but acquitted of 3 others, including sodomy and illegal possession of firearms. As a result, in February of 1995, a judge sentenced him to 18 months to 4.5 years in prison. But let's put a pin in all of that for just a second. In 1993 and 1994, in between court dates and jail time for another crime I don't feel like getting into, Tupac recorded material in various recording studios in both New York and Los Angeles. On March 14, 1985, just a month after the rapper had been sentenced to prison, Tupac released his 3rd studio album recorded amid his turbulent times, which is aptly titled Me Against the World. The album debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Albums chart, making Tupac the first artist in history to have a number 1 album while incarcerated. Regarded by many, by me, as Tupac's best album, Me Against the World showcased a quantum leap in both Tupac's production team as well as his abilities as a songwriter. On the music side, the beat slowed down quite a bit and the overall aggression eased a lot in comparison with the album's predecessors. The album features G-Funk and more songs than not, and Tupac made more room for jazz rap vibes. My favorite thing about the production side of the record, the snare throughout the album is fire, especially on the album's title track, as well as the homage to Golden Age hip-hop artist Old School, and the most relatable song for adolescents, Fuck the World. Lyrically, Tupac leaned into his vulnerable side, established on Strictly. He opens up about his mental health, mentioning depression and suicidal ideation multiple times. Within his introspection, found heavily on the record, he often reminisces of his youthful exploits, idealizing the simpleness that youth provides when juxtaposed to the realities of adulthood. But more than anything, he discusses his unrelenting paranoia in the face of his own mortality quite a bit on the record. Like I said, Me Against the World was a commercial and critical success. The LP spent 4 weeks atop the Billboard Hot 200 album charts. To date, it has sold over 3.5 million copies. The album also achieved 3 hit singles, with the immortal Dear Mama peaking at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 on April 29, 1995, his highest charting single up to that point. Me Against the World received 2 Grammy Award nominations and garnered perfect scores from AllMusic and the Chicago Sun-Times. Writing for Rolling Stone, Chioke Coker praised the album and noted that its best moments occur when Tupac, quote, raps from the heart over slowed down tracks. In a positive 4 out of 5 star review, Select Magazine's Matt Hall called the record, quote, a fine and thoughtful LP. He also greatly appreciated Tupac's willingness to communicate his demons, calling the record, quote, hip-hop's first blues LP. Before I discuss Tupac's final album he released before his death, it's important to mention the date of October 12, 1995. Tupac had been behind bars for 9 months at Clinton Correctional Facility in Dannemora, New York, while in the process of appealing his conviction. The rapper couldn't pay the $1.4 million bond. However, a 30-year-old former NFL defensive end named Marion Knight helped Tupac post bond, resulting in his release from prison. If you're not familiar with the name of the man that bailed him out, perhaps you may know his nickname, Suge. In 1991, Suge Knight, a bodyguard for producer and rapper Dr. Dre, entered into his timeline of infamy when he, along with Dr. Dre, as well as another rapper, DOC, and record producer/music promoter Dick Griffey, formed Death Row Records. The success of Death Row Records exploded when Dr. Dre's studio album, The Chronic, became a commercial and critical success, as well as a landmark album for hip-hop, catapulting the careers of Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, and Warren G, who all had features on the album. Death Row Records further deepened their pockets when in 1993, Snoop Dogg's debut studio album, Doggy Style, set the records for albums sold in its first week of release and ultimately outsold The Chronic. So it's safe to say that Suge Knight had a lot of money come 1995. Knight's contribution to Tupac's freedom did not come without preconditions. The rapper signed to Death Row Records while behind bars on October 4th, and 8 days later, Tupac was released from prison. Basically, immediately after leaving prison, Tupac headed to the studio in the San Fernando Valley to begin recording his follow-up LP, All Eyes on Me. The rapper essentially wrote and recorded the entirety of the 2-disc record in just 2 weeks. Many theories exist concerning his motivation for the vigor of his work, but apparently he didn't want to be on death row, perhaps because the label had garnered a reputation for the violent nature in which Suge Knight conducted business. So for him, the quicker he finished the records he promised to complete, the faster he could remove himself from death row. Regardless, Tupac released his 4th studio album, All Eyes on Me, on February 13th, 1996. From cover to cover, the production of the album, the catchiness of each song, the guest features, and Tupac's flow are just absolute fire. Those guest features are basically a who's who of rappers synonymous with 90s hip-hop, including Snoop Dogg, Nate Dogg, Corrupt, Redman, Method Man, and Dr. Dre. The lyrics deviate from the ethos of Tupac's 3 previous records with less focus on the rapper's introspection and political musings. Instead, Tupac celebrates rap stardom and thug life, but not without continuing discussing his debilitating paranoia as well as lamenting the struggle of many of his peers within the criminal justice system. The album became a critical and commercial blockbuster success. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 200 albums charts, selling over 500,000 copies in its first week. To date, All Eyes on Me has sold over 10.6 million copies, making it the 5th highest selling hip-hop album of all time. Perhaps the ridiculously high album sales lends itself to the success of the singles California Love as well as How Do You Want It. Both tunes peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 when they were released in tandem as a double A-side. Their success catapulted Tupac from famous rapper to cultural phenomenon. Critics very much enjoyed the album, with Steve Huey of AllMusic calling it Tupac's magnum opus. Paul Thompson of Pitchfork awarded the album a score of 9.4 out of 10, praising the album's, quote, alchemic blend of horror, fate, and defiance. Many media publications consider Tupac's 4th studio album a seminal hip-hop record and the gold standard of West Coast G-Funk. In 2010, Rolling Stone ranked the album 50 on their list of the greatest albums of the 90s, and in 2020 included it on their list of the 500 greatest albums of all time. The magazine The Hip Hop Connection ranked All Eyes on Me at number 35 on their list of the greatest hip-hop albums released between the years 1995 and 2005. Unfortunately, Tupac never got to bask in the pride of being included on those lists created in the 21st century, because on September 7th, 1996, just 7 months after the release of his biggest commercial success, Tupac Shakur was struck multiple times in a drive-by shooting while leaving a boxing match in Las Vegas, Nevada. He succumbed to his injuries on September 13th. He was 25 years old. While the murder largely was considered unsolved for nearly 3 decades, on September 29th of 2023, police arrested Dwayne Keith Davis, a member at the time of Tupac's murder of the gang the Southside Compton Crips. Davis was charged on 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. He is currently on house arrest awaiting trial. Despite his premature death, Tupac's legacy lives on strongly, as evidenced through 7 posthumous studio albums, 3 of which peaked at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 200 albums chart. In addition, some of his most iconic singles came from those records, including Do for Love, Running, Dying to Live, and Changes, all of which became top 40 pop hits. However, as I proceed to the part of the episode where I name Tupac's signature song, I'll focus solely on songs released during Tupac's life, since those are the songs for which he maximized his creative input. Over the past month or so, as I've been considering the apex of this Tupac episode, trying to figure out the signature song of the rapper, which of course leads to the crown of signature song, has proven incredibly difficult. Tupac was as dynamic of an artist, as I've discussed. Sometime during the process of listening ad nauseum to the anthology I of course created to determine Tupac's signature song, I stumbled upon the previously mentioned Rolling Stone article in which Chioke Coker reviewed Me Against the World and praised the parts of the record where Tupac, quote, raps from the heart over slowed down tracks. For me, while I love his hardcore hip-hop tunes and G-Funk classics, it's always been his tender ditties that showcase the rapper at his best. So unlike my previous signature song episodes where I analyzed and dissected the music and lyrics to the point where a signature sound emerged, this time I'm just looking for a song where Tupac raps authentically from the heart over a slow to mid-tempo. A song whose legacy endures and has aged as fine as the cultural status of the iconic rapper. I could have picked How Do You Want It, the third single from Tupac's most commercially successful record, All Eyes on Me. This tune features a sexy R&B hook from the Charlotte-based duo Casey and JoJo. For all my Gen Xers and Millennials listening, if that group doesn't ring a bell, check out their 1998 #1 hit single, All My Life. Anyways, this tune is a bit emotional for me because it's the one that ignited my fandom to Tupac back when I started listening to the rapper in college. In my humble opinion, How Do You Want It ranks as Tupac's catchiest song. If you disagree with me, citing the American public may not be the smartest idea, as the tune currently possesses over 180 million plays on Spotify. Existing somewhere between R&B and G-Funk, if its music sounds like it belongs in the club, the lyrics only reinforce that. While there are moments in which Tupac steps into the familiar territory of political issues, such as referencing the 1996 U.S. presidential election and dissing civil rights activist C. Dolores Tucker, who had spoken out against the lyrical content of rap music in the 90s, the majority of the song nonchalantly celebrates pleasure-seeking exploits. Lines such as, quote, "Catch you at a club, oh shit you got me fiendin'," as well as, quote, "Your body is bangin', baby, I love the way you flaunt it," force the label of How Do You Want It as a low-stakes pop song that makes listeners want to dance. And of course, I find no issue with that. However, when I think of him at his core as an artist, I don't think happy-go-lucky pop musician would be the way any Tupac stan would categorize the rapper. Thus, while a banger, How Do You Want It certainly cannot find itself as Tupac's signature song. I could have picked Keep Your Head Up, the third single from Tupac's second studio album. In terms of commercial success, peaking at number 12 on the Billboard Hot 100, the song picked up where Tupac's crossover hit, I Get Around, left off. And with over 275 million views on Spotify, Keep Your Head Up still resonates with contemporary audiences. The tranquil 11th track features the first instance of the rapper showcasing his softer side. While prior to this tune, the vast majority of his songs centered on institutional racism, police brutality, and quote-unquote thug life, this tune has become hailed as a feminist anthem, with the rapper pleading with women to stay positive, despite the adversity experienced in the face of misogyny. Over the laid-back instrumental featuring the R&B singer Dave Hollister, who serves somewhat as a hype man for a lack of a better phrase, Tupac takes a stand against deadbeat dads, sexual assault, and domestic abuse. He delivers, in my opinion, the superior lyrical performance up to that point in his career. Certain lines in the song carry as heavy of weight now as they did then. For example, listen to the final few lines of the first verse, quote, "I think it's time to kill for our women, time to heal our women, be real to our women, and if we don't, we'll have a race of babies that will hate the ladies that make the babies. And since a man can't make one, he has no right to tell a woman when and where to create one. So will the real men get up? I know you're fed up, ladies, but keep your head up." In addition to the beautiful message he communicates, he also features an early example of the wordplay that Tupac would employ more frequently in his subsequent work. For example, in the middle of the second verse, he shares a personal note about a grieving friend with the lines, quote, "Last night, my buddy lost his whole family. It's gonna take the man in me to conquer this insanity." I personally think Keep Your Head Up is not only one of Tupac's finest songs, but one of the finest songs of the 90s. And since the tune is slowed down, and I do feel that Tupac raps from the heart, my reluctance in naming it as Tupac's signature song comes from an uncomfortable place. While I recognize the sincerity in every word of the song, the misogyny present in some of his other songs, coupled with the controversial conviction in the sexual assault case, preclude me from finding the requisite authenticity in Keep Your Head Up needed to crown it as his signature song. I could have picked So Many Tears, the second single from Me Against the World. The morose fourth track on the record fared well on the charts, hitting number 4 in the hip-hop charts and 44 on the pop charts. While it doesn't have the Spotify plays as some of the other songs on the anthology, Tupac's immense vulnerability and in turn relatability on the track clearly connected with listeners, as the tune has north of 115 million streams on that platform. With So Many Tears, the rapper reflects on the trials and tribulations experienced throughout his life, from childhood depression to witnessing murder to paranoia within romantic relationships. Throughout the song, he contemplates his mortality and the prospect of the afterlife. He He even appears to engage in ideation of death and suicide. In the second half of the third verse, Tupac spits a certain stream of consciousness that represents so much of the internal strife he battled during the me against the world era of his life. Those lyrics read, quote, "I had my mind full of demons trying to break free. They planted seeds and they hatched, sparking the flame inside my brain like a match. Such a dirty game, no memories, just misery. Painting a picture of my enemies, killing me in my sleep. Will I survive to see the morning, to see the sun? Please, Lord, forgive me for my sins, 'cause here I come." I feel like you'll hear a lot about how Tupac was a poet, and lines like that validate that sentiment. On the music side at 93 beats per minute, the slowed down tempo creates a relaxed demeanor, strengthened through its samples, most notably the harmonica from Stevie Wonder's 1982 hit, That Girl. The rest of the instrumentation is subtle, allowing the powerful lyrics to protrude. So using that Rolling Stone quote as a litmus test, So Many Tears certainly makes a compelling case as Tupac's signature song. But as a transcendent talent, Tupac's ability to reach listeners outside of hip-hop audiences remains a key component of his legacy. So the fact that the song didn't even crack the top 40 and doesn't rank in Tupac's top 10 most played songs on Spotify, I can't quite justify So Many Tears as Tupac's signature song. And for my hot take of the episode, I, Dove Brenner, will utter the blasphemous words I could have picked, but didn't, California Love. The first single to be released after the rapper's release from prison, the song became an international smash hit when released as a double A-side along with How Do You Want It. In the US, it hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100, R&B charts, rap charts, and dance charts. Outside of America, the tune became a top 10 hit on the pop charts in Australia, Austria, Denmark, Germany, Iceland, Italy, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United Kingdom. To date, the song remains immensely popular with nearly 700 million streams on Spotify. Fun fact, 11 versions of the song exist for some reason. Anyways, the song features 2 very notable guest appearances. The song opens with the words of its title sung through a talk box by legendary funk singer Roger Troutman, who provided vocals for the hook as well as the funky extended outro. The other feature of the album came from the producer of the song, Andre Romel Young, though there is a slight possibility you may know him better as Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre raps the entirety of the first verse and provides ad-libs at other points in the tune. As much popularity as the song enjoyed upon release and still enjoys nearly 30 years later, the accolades and acclaim the song garnered from critics may exceed that. In 2020, Rolling Stone named California the 320th greatest song of all time. In 2007, VH1 ranked the song 51st on their list of the 100 greatest songs of the 90s, and in 2011, Slant Magazine awarded the song the title of the 17th greatest single of the 90s. And I probably agree with all of these accolades. California Love is a tremendous song. The celebratory lyrics of the state of California are endearing. The talk box used throughout is interesting. The piano loop is infectious, and the duo of Tupac and Dr. Dre rapping about their love of the Golden State is a triumph for West Coast hip-hop. And beyond that, with the acclaimed Dr. Dre at the helm as producer, and the fact that it remains the only number 1 single for the part legendary but mainly infamous Death Row Records, gives it, in my humble opinion, the title of the signature hip-hop song of the 90s. But the name of this episode is Tupac's signature song, not the signature hip-hop song of the 90s. I really don't even think a solid argument can be made awarding California Love this podcast's sacred crown. Even if we ignore the fact that the song's high energy and superficial lyrics are at odds with my simple criteria, I don't think it's feasible to call it Tupac's signature song when he essentially only raps in 1 verse, and that 1 verse doesn't begin until 2 minutes and 18 seconds in. Therefore, despite being perhaps the most recognizable G-Funk song ever and an iconic achievement for Tupac and his West Coast cohorts, I can't in good conscience award California Love the title of Tupac's signature song. While I've spent more time than I anticipated discussing and lauding the runners-up for Tupac's signature song, I think of all 5 signature song episodes I've done, I'm confident listeners will find this choice least controversial. So here it goes. Tupac's signature song undoubtedly is Dear Mama, the lead single and 9th track from Me Against the World, the record I consider his magnum opus. On the commercial side, it became an instant success, peaking at number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April of 1995, less than 2 months after its release. The song also became a top 10 hit in New Zealand and Belgium. To date, the song has accumulated nearly 300 million streams on Spotify, and its video has over 430 million plays on YouTube. Once again, signaling Tupac's successful score on the test of time. The song opens with a subtle A-sharp minor 7 chord played on the keys, followed by a beautiful orchestral arrangement which grabs listeners' attention so they can hear carefully when the rapper comes in with the 3 words that hold maybe as much weight as every lyric found in the tune's 3 verses. Those words, quote, "You are appreciated." As the title suggests, Tupac wrote the tender tune as a tribute to his mother, Afeni Shakur. Throughout the song, Tupac genuinely communicates the history of their relationship, the turmoil they faced, the errors Afeni committed, the mistakes Tupac made. But little ambiguity exists surrounding the overarching theme. Through thick and thin, the rapper's love for his mother reigns supreme, as does she within the people Tupac deems most important in his life. The warmth of the instrumentals, driven by a gentle tempo of 84 beats per minute and bluesy guitar licks, guides listeners' focus to some of Tupac's most heartfelt and vulnerable lines. Examples include expressing the pain of growing up without a father and the subsequent yearning for a father figure with the lines, quote, "No love for my daddy 'cause the coward wasn't there. He passed away and I didn't cry 'cause my anger wouldn't let me feel for a stranger. They say I'm wrong and I'm heartless, but all along I was looking for a father, he was gone. I hung around with the thugs, and even though they sold drugs, they showed a young brother love." But my favorite example occurs in the 3rd verse, when Tupac reminisces of his appreciation for his mother's efforts in raising him. Quote, "When I was sick as a little kid, to keep me happy, there's no limit to the things you did. And all my childhood memories are full of all the sweet things you did for me. And even though I act crazy, I gotta thank the Lord that you made me." He concludes that 3rd and final verse with a message of hope for his mother, and then ties all loose ends, reiterating the crux of the song, quote, "I wish I could take the pain away. If you can make it through the night, there's a brighter day. Everything will be all right if you hold on. It's a struggle every day, gotta roll on. And there's no way I can pay you back. But my plan is to show you that I understand you are appreciated." I certainly don't remain the only person enamored with Dear Mama. In 2012, Rolling Stone named Dear Mama the 18th greatest hip-hop song of all time. And in 2014, LA Weekly named it the 6th best. The most significant accolade for the tune occurred in 2010 when the United States Library of Congress inducted Dear Mama as the 3rd hip-hop song. Regarding the induction, the National Recording Preservation Board characterized the Tupac classic as, quote, "a moving and eloquent homage to both the murdered rapper's own mother and all mothers struggling to maintain a family in the face of addiction, poverty, and societal indifference." If we revisit the narrow criteria for the crown of signature song, I for the last time will stress that Tupac at his best rapped from the heart over a slowed down beat. Even before reading that article or writing this monologue, if you'd asked me to describe Dear Mama, I would have simply and of course inadvertently paraphrased the Rolling Stone quote and said, well, it's a heartfelt hip-hop ballad. That in combination with its success, power, relatability, and legacy gives me no choice but to recognize Dear Mama as Tupac Shakur's signature song. My guest today gives the podcast a couple firsts. It's the first time that a guest of the show is a coworker. It's also the first time in Hotcakes from a 90s Stan's history that we have someone from the music industry on the program. In addition to being a music teacher, he has worked on the production side with iconic names such as Lil Wayne, Sean Paul, and Trey Songz. So it's an absolute pleasure to welcome to the podcast Ashton Combs.
Hey, what it do, man? I appreciate you having me here.
I appreciate you being here, and I wanted to. I know we've kind of scratched the surface, but because I know you had mentioned that you worked with Lil Wayne, but you've also worked with Sean Paul as well. That was that was the other name that you mentioned. I was like, oh my god, that brings back memories to when I was like dancing at bar mitzvahs and stuff.
No, for sure, man. I have been blessed to be able to go after my dream and accomplish them. and like it's awesome, and the list just keeps growing, man. I had a song drop yesterday with that I produced for Eric Bellinger and K Camp. You should check it out. It's called Run That Back.
What is that? It's on like Spotify and all the places.
It's on everything. Chris Brown reposted it. So
wow,
yeah,
that's amazing. I love that. And another thing I love is just, you know, we are right at work. We're right across the hall. I teach Spanish and Ashton teaches music, and I'm hearing the kids like working on their production, and it's like it's awesome that you're able to give your skills back to the kids.
Yeah, man, it's really amazing, and it gives a sense of fulfillment to see like kids be interested in what you do, because nowadays, like for a teenager to be interested, like, oh my god,
in something academic. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's awesome, bro. Like I'm happy to be doing what I'm doing, man. So
we love that. But let's get into it. So the first three questions I ask every new guest.
Okay.
So my first question is, what music have you been listening to most recently?
Man, I've been listening to these cats. Let me find them. Let me look on my phone. The Sacred Souls.
The Sacred Souls? What kind of music are they?
Oh, bro, it's like 60s vintage, like Sam Cooke type vibes.
Wow.
Like, oh my goodness, it's amazing, and that's the type of music I grew up on.
Yeah. Well, that brings me to that literally is the perfect transition. So the second question I always ask a new guest is, what music were you spoon-fed as a child?
Well, soul music and gospel. I'm a preacher's son, and both of my parents were preacher kids. So growing up in church, like gospel music is in my DNA. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
And that was super interesting. I remember like learning like about like soul music. 'Cause I actually used to be, I don't know if you knew this, but I used to be a music teacher when I started.
Seriously?
Yeah, at of all places, a Catholic school.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and it was my
what?
First job it was a job. They're like, hey, we'll give you money, teach music, and I was like, okay,
right.
But obviously, I much prefer teaching Spanish. But I did enjoy it, and I taught a class called the History of American Music. And
Okay.
So I kind of teach them all about different genres, and because like America has just a rich history in so many genres. And when I learned about soul wasn't in the beginning of soul was like they were taking like church songs and like making them like what's the word I'm looking for? Secular.
Well, in so many words, yes, but in so many words, no. Not because in disagreement with what you're saying, but I think it's the essence of soul music stems from such a blues background, and so does gospel music. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there comes a point in time to where it's like, oh yeah, this is two sides of the same coin. You know what I'm saying? Like, you know what I mean? And there's no coincidence that most of our soul artists and the people that started Motown Records come from the church.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Ray Charles, church.
Well,
James Brown,
yeah.
church.
Well, that was like, because I remember obviously like when I first heard, Kanye's song Gold Digger way back when, and then finding out that, like it comes from the Ray Charles song, like I've Got a Woman, which comes from the gospel, from the church, like I've got a savior.
Yeah. Like it's all deeply connected, man.
Awesome. So when did you first start discovering music on your own? And which genres or artists did you get into then?
Man, so I had to be around like 13, 14, and I was really into like the neo soul movement at that time in the early 2000s, like Alicia Keys. D'Angelo is my guy. Music Soul Child is my guy. You know what I'm saying? Like
Erykah Badu as well.
Erykah Badu. So, I've actually met Erykah Badu.
Really?
She kissed me on this cheek.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Have you washed the cheek since? I don't think I would have.
I had to. So I was an intern in the summer of 2009 in New York at Universal Motown Records. And the person who I was interning for was her project manager. And so I'm in his office His name is Xavier Jernigan. He's actually works at Spotify now. I was in his office, and he's telling me what he needs me to make copies of, and all of a sudden I just feel an energy of Afro essence open up the door, and I look to my right, actually my left, and it's Miss fucking Badu. And I'm like, whoa, like I can see why whoever dates Erykah Badu changes their life and starts eating tree bark and shit.
I hope that was. I assume that's an Andre 3000 reference.
Yeah,
and I love
Jay
it. Yeah.
Electronica reference. That's
the list goes on
and on, bro. I was like, yeah, man, I want a grass smoothie right now.
That's great. That's great. All right, so I want to get into the man of the hour, but before I do, I have to ask you the question. I got to get it over with.
What's
I
up?
didn't want to do it. Biggie or Tupac?
Bruh. I would have to go. Oh man, I'll have to go with Tupac.
Okay.
I'll have to go with Tupac just because I can connect with him on the Black Panther background.
Mm-hmm.
And like Biggie had hits and Biggie's phenomenal, you know what I'm saying? But Tupac's music, like his actual music resonated more with me. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
yeah. Especially like the Dre and the whole like sampling like P-Funk vibe. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
like,
love that.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah. But shout out to Biggie too. Like, much respect on both sides.
Yeah. For sure. That's pretty much where I am. I think I'd probably give like a slight edge to Biggie. I think it's probably just being from New York.
Oh, okay.
And Ready to Die is like one of my all-time favorite albums.
For sure.
But I mean, you can't argue. I mean, Tupac was definitely the more prolific artist, but like you said, they're both great in their own right.
Yeah.
But when do you remember first hearing about Tupac?
When he died.
Really?
Yeah. Cause
Because you're a few years older than me, so do you
I'm
remember
not that much older than you.
You were a few.
What? Nah, I had to be. I will never forget. I remember it like yesterday. We were in my living room. I had to be like 5, 6, maybe. No more than 6. And I remember my dad and my brother. They were both standing in front of the TV when the news hit about, because this is before social media, so like this made the fucking news. Like, I can curse on here.
Yeah, you can curse.
Okay, all right, cool. And I remember my dad saying to my brother, and this is something that really stuck with me. And he was like, "Man, he was only 26." And my dad, like, he had this look on his face, like, golly, like his life was just getting started. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it was a hurt that, like, my dad never met Tupac, any of that, but with my dad coming from the civil rights era of the Deep South, it was one of those things of like, damn, like he got killed and he's at the height of his, like, he was like, you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things like, oh, like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I hope I'm articulating it right.
No, I totally
yeah.
get it. I'm trying to think back like to the celebrity deaths, and obviously it sounds like your dad kind of related to Tupac more than just on the artistic level.
Right.
Because, Tupac, especially, in his first 2 albums, was just like super political.
Mm-hmm.
So like your dad connected with him not just through the music, but
and my dad taught political science.
Really?
Yeah. He was a political science professor. So
really, I didn't know that. Where did he teach?
University of Nebraska.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But so it's like, to me, I'm when I was researching him and listening, and I listened a lot, especially to because I focus on the 4 albums that he released while he was alive. There's 4 studio albums that he released, not like his stuff with Outlaws, but like things that this is Tupac. And one thing that I realized, it was like it was really hard for me to like characterize him as like a rapper. You know what I mean? I feel like other rappers, it's like a little easier for me. Like, how would you characterize him?
Man, I break down Tupac in so many different levels. Like, he was a political activist. He was a gangster / knucklehead.
Yeah.
And he also was an internet troll before the internet.
How so?
Did you listen to Hit 'Em Up?
That's off All Eyes on Me.
I believe so.
I think I did, but I don't think I looked at the lyrics too much.
The first line was, "I fucked your wife."
Well, it's funny. It's funny you mention that, because I was reading today like an article about him, and someone mentioned like he was, obviously not the current Kanye, but like Kanye in the early to mid 2000s. Tupac was Kanye before Kanye.
I would say Tupac was not Kanye. Like, Tupac had a level of trolling and like trying to get underneath people's skin that like was a little bit more harsher and a little bit more, and as I grow up hearing a little bit more low down it than Kanye. Like, Kanye says shit, and then it's like 3 years down the line, we're like, oh, okay, all right, like, I get what you were trying to say. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, but Tupac was more like, in my eyes, was more like, oh no, he's saying it. Like,
he means every word he says.
Like there's no nah, this is what he means. Like, there's no beating around the bush. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. And do you would you say you have like for me, I've definitely thought a lot about this, and just the way that my brain works. I love to categorize things and like, oh, this is my favorite album by this artist or favorite song by that artist. Do you have like a favorite Tupac album, or like a Tupac album that you find yourself coming back to?
I have 2 favorite Tupac songs. 3.
Go for it.
Keeping Your Head Up.
Dear
Mama. And California Love.
Love all 3 of those songs.
Yes.
It was when I was in college the first time that I heard Dear Mama. And it was interesting because there's so much of the lyrics that I can't relate to, but that chorus, like, you are appreciated. Like, I'd always send, like, every Mother's Day I would, send that to my mom. You know what I mean?
Like, that is, oh man, like, and that's where I say that Kanye is. I mean, see, now you got me thinking about fucking Kanye.
I'm sorry,
and I'm a Kanye head too, yeah. But nah, Tupac. That's why I have to give him like that forever gratitude and forever appreciation of his ability to switch in and out, for lack of better words, characters or different sides of his personality. Because to make a song like Dear Mama, like, you really have to be in tune with your trauma, because every lyric in Dear Mama was like, it wasn't like, oh mom, you were so great. It was like, nah, even though you were a crack fiend, mama, like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's alluding to like, hey man, there were certain parts of our childhood that was fucked up, but the older me realizes that you were doing the best that you could. You know what I'm saying? And there's a level of maturity and a level of vulnerability and a level of grace that he gave his mama. Like, damn. And I'm only thinking that now because being a father and raising a son, I'm really looking like, oh damn, my parents really didn't have all the answers. Like, some situations that I brought to them out of, either me being a knucklehead teenager, or, you know what I'm saying? Some, like, that shit was new to them. Like, whoa. Like,
I think when you're a kid, like, you kind of see your parents as, like, gods. You know what I mean? And they can do no wrong. And I always tell the story that I remember I was, like, 3 or 4 years old. And when I was, like, really little, because my dad, was he's a doctor, so he was always in the ER and working and stuff like that. So I don't have too many memories of my dad growing up. So I was always with my mom.
Uh-huh.
And I remember one time, I did something dumb, and I felt like shamed. I felt ashamed of what I did. My mom was like, "Duff, it's okay. Like, everyone makes mistakes. Like, even sometimes mommy makes mistakes." And I just remember thinking to myself, I was 3 or 4 years old. I'm like, "No, this can't be right. There's no way. There's no way this woman is capable of making a mistake." But then obviously as you grow up and you get into high school, college, etc., you realize, oh, they're human beings too. Like, they're capable of all the things that we're capable of.
Yeah. And that's one thing that my dad, man, rest in power. He used to always tell me, like, man, some people are doing the best that they can, bro. Like, even when you think or you see them at their lowest point, it's like, no, man, always extend grace, because you have no clue what people have been through or going through, or the things that they have to unwrap and unravel from life. So
yeah, definitely well said. And I know, I don't know, is there an album? I know you mentioned your songs. Is there like a particular album that you would say is your favorite, or that you come back to, or are you more, no, it's like, oh, I more just listen to like songs and such?
I'm more just songs, bro.
Yeah.
When it comes to Tupac, now we were talking about Kendrick Lamar. That'd be totally different.
I got to get my Kendrick episode. I think I have so many people like, yeah, Dove, if you have a Kendrick episode, I'll be on. So we'll have like a panel.
Bro, let's do it, because Kendrick is my guy.
Oh, I love
How to Pimp a
Kendrick,
Butterfly. Yeah. Oh my God. Which has the very end, the Tupac interview.
Well, yeah. Well, this is the second time you've done it. You've literally said something that goes right into my next question.
Hey, because we in tune, man. It's meant to be, bro.
So this is the one thing, and I'm gonna ask you this question, but so growing up, my introduction to rap was like probably like a lot of suburban white kids in the early 2000s was Eminem.
That's funny as fuck.
And it was so funny listening to All Eyes on Me. There was at least 2 or 3 times where I'm like, shit, this is Eminem.
Oh, man. Hold on, bro. How My Name Is was your, like, what the fuck genre of music is this?
The first hip-hop song that I remember was The Real Slim Shady. Oh, no. I broke Ashton.
I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing with you.
Either would be accepted. It's all good. If I can cause laughter in some way, I am happy.
Bro, that is hilarious, bro. Hey, I respect it, man. Shout out to Slim Shady, bro. Whoa, what was the question, bro?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask you the question. So, but anyways, it's like what I'm saying is like I really noticed. It's like, wow, like even The Real Slim Shady, there's like a line in a song off All Eyes on Me, which I think essentially Eminem interpolated. Like, there's a million motherfuckers that look just like me or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that was from The Real Slim Shady, and there was like a really similar line. I can't remember from which song, but even like that, I never really like connected the dots. And I know that Eminem was influenced. So my question is, do you notice, well, besides obviously Kendrick Lamar, and you can even include talking about Kendrick Lamar, but do you notice Tupac's influence on other rappers?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, to be honest with you, like, the whole Tupac and Biggie beef, and not to harp on something that was, negative, but the only aspect of life that was missing in that beef was the social media aspect. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Because, like, that beef was so huge that it cost 2 people their lives. And if you dive into, what's going on with the drill rappers and the trap rappers, like, nah, people out here dropping, like, people out here, you know what I'm saying? And on a more positive note, I think that Tupac was so unapologetically himself that it allowed people that space to be like, nah, like, I can sweep the streets, hand out turkeys, kiss babies, but also be that motherfucker you don't fuck with.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, that was, and then I was reading a lot of different articles, and people were saying the same thing, that like Tupac had such an interesting dichotomy.
Yeah, right.
Because literally, like on what was it, on the Strictly, his second album, he had "Keep Your Head Up,"
yeah,
and then 2 songs later is "I Get Around."
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, and to be honest, that is people though.
Yeah.
That's people.
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I can sometimes be the same motherfucker who's like, oh no, give him grace, and then be the same dudes like, hey man, I wouldn't take that shit if I were you. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
well, it's so funny you mentioned that, because I was thinking about it. So like across the street from here, right, and I can show you after, but there's a really good breakfast place. It's called Homegrown.
Let's go.
And there's they have like hats there that they, like, the staff wear, and one of them is like a quote. It's like or what was it? It's good to be nice, or something like that. Or you know, nice is better, or something like that. And I'm like, man, I got to get that hat. But then I realized, have you ever listened to the way that I talk to my friends? I don't always,
yeah,
I don't always embrace that nice is better approach, because, you know, at the end of the day, like, you're never going to be the same person 24/7, you know? But and this is an interesting question, because like I feel once I got into middle school and you know, was exposed to different people's like tastes in music, the name Tupac I heard all the time, and you would see the shirts and all that stuff. So why do you think Tupac, at least since his death, you know, just like Biggie, has become such like a cultural phenomenon?
Because he represents standing up for what you believe in. Like, this is somebody who has spit on paparazzi cameras and who has flipped off paparazzi cameras and who had Thug Life tatted on his abs, and who also stuck up for a group of people at the time that didn't feel like they were being heard. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes a special cat to be born in Baltimore and then move to Cali when he was like, what, 17, 18?
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
And then, like, all of a sudden, like, one of your biggest songs is California Love.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, he had such that like West Coast identity, but like you said, like the vast majority of his life was on the East Coast.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And like, and even not, you know, his West Coast identity wasn't the typical like LA Compton. It was like, nah, Oakland.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh shit, hold on, what?
Yeah,
like yeah, you know what I mean? So, and then for me, bro, like, I'm gonna be honest, like, the Black Panther, I got a Black Panther tatted on my arm. Like,
oh really?
Oh yeah, like the Black Panther movement and what they really stood for, not what the media is telling you they stood for. Like, they were the first people in this country who started the free breakfast programs for kids who couldn't afford to eat.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times we see the Black Panther movement as just, you know, cats who wouldn't take no shit and, you know, carrying AR-15s around. Nah. Like, I think that also speaks to my point earlier about how Tupac was able to have that I'm not gonna take bullshit from anybody, but also could have the vulnerability and sensitivity to appreciate a flower growing out of the ground. I remember the first poem book my parents bought me was A Rose from Concrete, and it was Tupac's poems. So like, identifying with the Black Panther movement and me, like, you can ask my parents, bro. I was 5 talking about, hey, I want to be a Black Panther when I grow up. And seeing somebody with that magnitude of success represent that movement, it's like, hold on, oh snap. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, and that's why my favorite songs, I already told you my 3, like the Keeping Your Head Up and Dear Mama, bro. Like, sheesh. You know what I'm saying? Like his hardcore songs, like, yeah, they cool, but I like the songs to where it's like, oh nah, like you tapping into a whole nother level of like real manhood is what I call it. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Kind of like, people talk so much about toxic masculinity, but they don't really talk about, non-toxic masculinity.
Or just masculinity.
Or just, right. Right.
Right.
So, and I think I mentioned this earlier, but I love to categorize different things, and I'm always like, even with the students when we talk about hip hop, I'll talk with students and they'll be, oh, what's your, top 5 all time? Where do you think that Tupac ranks among the greatest rappers of all time, or even just like 90s rappers?
Definitely top 5. Top 5. Definitely top 10.
Yeah, he's in my top 10.
Yeah, top 10.
In the 90s, he's probably top 5 for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
but me being so young, I don't really listen to rap like that. So not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not in the 90s.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I mean, to be honest with you, Twista and Bone Thugs and Harmony would be like in my top 5. They'd be over, just for the region that I'm from, they would be over Tupac, to be honest with you.
Where are they from?
They're from the Midwest.
Really?
Yeah. Twista's from Chicago, and Bone Thugs and Harmony are from Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as I think I mentioned earlier, like we're talking, for this episode in the monologue, I talk about, a signature song, and it's just like, how would you define a signature song?
Impact. Yeah. Impact. Because I know some artists, their signature song isn't necessarily their biggest song or their most popular song.
Oh, I agree 1,000%.
Yeah. So, impact for sure.
And what would you say is Tupac's signature song?
I say he has a couple. Or we talking about personally just for me?
You can do both. You can do personally for you, and then...
All right, cool. So, for me, it would be Keeping Your Head Up. And for everybody, I would either have to say... Honestly, I think Tupac is one of those artists to where, like, it could vary.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Because, like, you have some people who it could be like, oh, California Love, or you have some people it could be like Brenda's got a got a baby song, or it could be what was the
How Do You Want It?
Me? Yeah, How Do You Want? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, it's just all over the place, which is awesome.
Yeah, for me, so I totally agree, and that you can have like a song like Personally that you would consider, and then also what other people might consider. I always feel like if it's what other people consider, it's got to be California Love, because I feel like that embodies so much about not only 90s rap, but G-Funk, and like, having Dr. Dre on the album, or on the song. It's on Death Row Records. It's like, it's so, like, it really speaks to that particular moment in time. But for me, I think Dear Mama is a signature song.
Absolutely.
Like, it's in the goddamn Library of Congress.
Absolutely.
Know what I mean?
That's crazy. Absolutely. You see what I'm saying? That's just another layer of Tupac, where it's like you can flip off the camera and spit on the camera, but be in the Library of Congress.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, bruh, like, it's
that's
Tupac.
that's what should be written on his headstone. Well, anyways, Ashton, thank you so much for coming over and talking about this. This has been so much fun, and I've learned a lot throughout this conversation as well, not only about you, but just about hip hop in general. So thank you so much for coming out, and we'll get you back for the Kendrick Lamar panel.
Got to, man, because Kendrick Lamar, like, oh my God, like, Kendrick Lamar he took the torch, he took the baton, and
he's got the torch.
Yeah,
he's got the torch, and he has not let it go
at all, man. And I appreciate you having me, man.
Awesome. It was my absolute pleasure. All right, man.
Take care.
Thanks, y'all, for listening. I want to give a special thanks to Ashton Combs for being a phenomenal guest. Y'all have a great rest of your day, and whatever it brings, hopefully music is involved. Again, I'm Dove Brenner, and this is Hot Cakes from a 90s Stand. Take care.